Hello, everyone. My name is Dara Bryans. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the sabbatical ministers here at First Parish in Needham, along with Reverend Jenna Crawford. As many of you might remember, this past weekend we had a snowstorm, and Reverend Jenna and I quickly pivoted from the sermon and service that we had planned to a more pastoral and spiritual practice-oriented one. But the message that we wanted to give in that service feels too important today, in this time, to just leave. So, with that in mind, I'm going to offer a pastoral message that speaks into the time we're living in. Years ago, when I was in high school, I took part in an exchange program with the school in northern Germany, and I spent about a month living with a family and attending school. My host family was so lovely. They were a well-to-do family living in a suburb near Hamburg. Jorgen was an executive with a major gas and oil company. Rita was a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids, all in high school. And one sunny afternoon, we were sitting out in their garden, enjoying a coffee and kuchen. And I, with all the arrogance of a teenager, asked them, "Where were you during World War II? Where was your family? What did you and they know, and what did y'all do about it?" What I was trying to be polite about asking was, how could they have let the atrocities of the Nazi Party and the genocide happen? And bless them. The parents were so patient with me. Jürgen explained that the German economy had been so devastated in the years following the First World War, and inflation had made the currency all but worthless, and people were hungry and they were angry. Hitler promised an end to inflation. He promised jobs and a return of self-respect, Jürgen told me. "Dara," Rita said, "you have to understand. We were all so afraid. Afraid for ourselves, our families, neighbors, and friends." I have thought about this conversation and others I've had over the years with German and Austrian friends. The common denominator in all these conversations is that people were afraid. They felt hopeless, and they were doing their very best just to survive. These days, I'm finding myself directing these questions that I asked that family. I'm directing them back at myself. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news these days, but I can't seem to look away. What is happening is being called a coup by more than one reliable source. What makes it a coup when Mr. Trump is our duly elected president, you might wonder? It is in his attempt to consolidate power in the executive branch. His many executive orders demanding actions or the end of actions that the president does not hold the authority to do. His creation of the so-called Department of Governmental Efficiency. Mind you that only Congress has the ability to create new governmental departments and agencies. This DOGE would more correctly be called a task force. This task force, headed by Elon Musk, a man who was denied clearance to classified data because of his ties to Russia and China, has seized control of the Department of the Treasury. Musk and a handful of 18 to 20-year-olds have literally moved couches and sofas and beds into the Treasury building and are downloading onto external hard drives the personal information of all US citizens who have received a check from the federal government. These assistants of Musk are rewriting computer code for these Treasury Department computers. And through these computers, they've gained access to other departments like the USAID, stopping payments that they don't agree with. Elected representatives, including our own Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, they have tried to gain entry and access into the Department of Treasury, and they were denied. Congress is the only governmental body that decides when and how our money is spent. The president can advise, and the president can veto. But neither the president nor the executive branch has the constitutional right to cherry pick what gets funded and what does not. The Department of Government Efficiency has taken this power away from Congress and consolidated it within the executive branch. Congress, in failing to take action against what is happening, is undermining our democracy and breaking their vow to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Democratic representatives and senators report anecdotally that their Republican counterparts agree that the president's actions are unconstitutional, but that they are too afraid to speak out. My 16-year-old self posed these questions with all of the smug self-assurance of someone who could not envision a time when the United States would ever allow fascism to rise in America. I'm making a guess that most of you also never thought we would come to the place that we now are. And I'm now confronted with the questions that I posed to Jorgen and to Rita. What did you know? What did you do? And how could you allow it to happen? I know that parallels with Germany in the 1930s make a lot of folks uncomfortable, and reasonably rightfully so. But the similarities don't end with the consolidation of power and the abrogation of a constitution and the breaking of laws. The Nazi Party also designated internal enemies. They said that the Jewish people, LGBTQ folks, liberal religious lay leaders, and clergy, that they were also enemies. Today, our government has named immigrants as an internal threat. We've deported nearly 10,000 people since Inauguration Day, fewer than what the president had hoped, and yet still far too many. Our president has designated Guantanamo as a detention site that can house up to 30,000 individuals. Another name for a detention site is a concentration camp, a place where government concentrates a high number of people with a certain identity. The president has also designated trans, two-spirit, gender-expansive folks as enemies within and is seeking to eradicate them from public life. Most recently, some red states have begun to deny gender-affirming medical care to adults and youth who use Medicare and Medicaid for their health care. All demographic data regarding two-spirit, trans, and gender-expansive people has been deleted from the U.S. Census data. Any government funding research projects that mention gender have been canceled. The use of pronouns by federal workers and anyone receiving federal dollars is forbidden. The erasure of any class or identity of people is also known as a genocide. What we are experiencing right now is a coup. It is an attempt to replace our democracy with a fascist oligarchy. So what do we do? Well, I believe that we need to lean into hope. According to Nick Cave, who is an Australian punk rocker, Nick Cave wrote, "Hope is broken-hearted optimism." And in one of his Red Hand Files letters, he writes, "Unlike cynicism, hopefulness is hard-earned, makes demands upon us, and can often feel like the most indefensible and lonely place on earth. Hopefulness is not a neutral position either. It is adversarial. It is a warrior emotion that can lay waste to cynicism. Each redemptive or loving act, as small as you like, keeps the devil down in the hole. It says that the world and its inhabitants have value and are worth defending. It says that the world is worth believing in. I say we lean into this warrior emotion of hope. We find strength in our UU ancestors, like James Luther Adams, a 20th century UU minister, theologian, and professor. He described a conversion experience, and I want to be clear, he was not converting to or from Christianity. Rather, he had a radical awakening to what we are called to do and to be as Unitarian Universalists. And this conversion, it was triggered by his time and experience in 1936 Nazi Germany, when he met with philosopher Karl Jaspers, who said of liberal religion and liberal Christianity that it, quote, doesn't have any significance, it has Zwang. Zwang is a German word that carries within it the idea of something powerful and strong that we cannot live without. Adams heard about liberal religions embodying this Zwang at the same time he was meeting with underground anti-Nazi activists while attending a German seminary with them. These activists lamented that if, quote, 1,000 of us had acted, unquote, when Hitler first came to power, the world would be a different place and many lives would have been saved. Adams came to believe that our obligation as UUs is to hang on to and center the belief that the world and all of its inhabitants have value and are worth defending. Hope is broken-hearted optimism. It is adversarial, a warrior emotion. Hope is Zwang, this compelling power and strength that we cannot live without. I believe that we are called to grasp this Zwang with both hands, to rise up in this moment, to be a part of the 1,000 people who dare to say no to what our president and the administration is doing in our name. I know that this is a frightening time. It is an anxious time. And I encourage all of us to come together to share our knowledge and our ideas and our broken-hearted optimism. Do not listen to anyone who says that you are powerless. We are not alone. We have one another and we have a faith of shared values. We need one another now in this time, and our world needs us. Thank you for listening.